What is up, everybody? Episode 9 of Dexter Resurrection aired last night, titled Touched by an Angel. And man, I dropped a quick little reaction last night at like 1:30 in the morning because I just had to get my immediate reaction out and then wanted to sleep on it, of course, before I give my full thoughts on this episode. But easy to say that this is going to be the episode, at least so far in the season, that fans are going to be talking about, crying over, cheering over, debating, feeling conflicted about of the entire season. This is one of the most emotionally devastating things to happen in Dexter since maybe season 4. And I have a lot of thoughts on this episode. This is probably going to be a long recap and review because there's so many things to unpack, so many things to talk about here, so many things to speculate on for the future. I don't even really know how I feel about a lot of it. Like I'm pretty much left in such a point of conflict, which, you know, that's good storytelling to a certain extent. I really hope with one episode to go and however many seasons of Resurrection they plan on doing, I really hope that they have something in store that is going to justify what they just did. So as always, guys, we're going to go through the episode in sequential order. In previous episodes, I kind of categorized them by characters, but these last few have been so jam-packed with story that it just makes more sense to just basically recap the episode beat by beat and talk about everything as we get to it. So the episode kicks off, paying off right where we left at the end of episode 8, where Prater has approached Dexter and Harrison eating in this restaurant. And so Prater is basically putting on this little face and having a conversation with Harrison, trying to get little bits of information. Dexter's trying to interject and kind of stop the conversation. And Harrison doesn't realize what is going on because he doesn't understand or have any knowledge whatsoever about Red or his relationship, Dexter's relationship with Prater. So he's just kind of nerding out at the fact that his dad knows one of the most prolific people in New York. And so he's very much like flattered and, you know, very much fanboying out to a certain extent at Prater's interest in him. And every little bit that he gives, Dexter's like, one more step closer to figuring out who the fuck I am. So eventually Dexter kind of pushes Prater to, hey, let's go have a chat outside. And he goes outside. As soon as he walks out, you get this little POV view of somebody taking pictures of them walking out of this restaurant. He sees Charlie across the street with this satisfied look on her face, and he confronts Prater about having him followed. And it was a really interesting conversation where Prater is more or less like, dude, I don't like people having secrets, and you've been very elusive so far. And now I figure out you have a son, like you move, you don't keep me in the loop of things that you're doing. Which, you know, they've already established that even if he's actually Red's a very secretive person. But Dexter more or less knows at this point that they've gotten too close. And so he's trying to, at all costs, just keep them the fuck away from Harrison. Like, he knows now we've come to the point where something explosive is about to happen, but I don't want the collateral damage to hit my son. So this entire conversation ends up, from Dexter's point of view, being about trying to get Harrison out of the blast path. And Prater is more or less just continuing to be ultimately fascinated by who Red is, despite all the red flags, despite all the warnings coming from Charlie. And I'm sure even though to this point that Prater has completely rejected all of Charlie's suspicions, there's a part of him in his brain that I'm sure is turning a bit too and curious what exactly is going on here, but he's more fascinated by it than he is scared or intimidated by it. And so he's trying to set up a meet with Red to finally clear the air, to just lay everything out on the table. He wants to know everything about Red, what pushes him, what made him kill, everything like that. So they're setting up this little meet while somebody is taking pictures from afar. And then once that is all wrapped up, Dexter goes back in, and I don't know if this was as deliberate as I took it, but you get this really cool little seemingly homage to Goodfellas, where Dexter goes back into the restaurant and grabs Harrison. He's like, we got to get the fuck out of here. And they start, they get the needle drop from one of the songs from Goodfellas, where I believe it was playing whenever he was driving, trying to get away from the helicopter in the third act. And they're going through the kitchen, And while it's not filmed from behind the way that Scorsese did it, it's still kind of a similar type of sequence as a very famous sequence in Goodfellas where they're following Henry Hill and his wife through the back of the restaurant into the actual hall. So to me, that was a cool little Goodfellas homage, if it wasn't meant to be that deliberate and it was just a kind of a coincidence that that was the needle drop and it happened to take place in a kitchen, whatever. I thought it was cool, put a smile on my face. And I like the fact that Harrison the entire time is like, what the hell's going on? Like begging him for information. And then Dexter lays out basically the events of the entire season to him and tells him that he killed the dark passenger, hunted him down, got him off the street. That's why I started doing the Your Car Drivers. I found this invitation. Prater's a sick fuck that organizes all these different serial killers, and I've been taking them out one by one. And I loved the moment, despite all these wild revelations that are happening here, that are just all getting dropped on Harrison at once, that Dexter just casually mentions that he took out the Gemini killer, and Harrison's like, the Gemini killer? And he's like, yep. Twins. And like it was like this little nerd out moment, like my dad's a badass. I really like that. You know, I like the fact that they're at this point in their relationship where Harrison's not revolted at this. There's almost like a mutual celebration between them. Like Harrison doesn't necessarily want to see it and doesn't really want to kill anymore himself, but the fact that his dad is taking out these prolific murderers, he's kind of cool with that now. And so I like that moment where yet again he like is patting himself in the back for taking out the big bad Gemini killer. So that was a great moment. And they're running away to the subway. And then, as expected, it's Batista who has been photographing them. And so all of a sudden you see Batista very close behind them, following them into the subway. And Dexter and Harrison get onto the subway, and Dexter tells him to go back. And I'm gonna escape out of here just in case somebody's following us. And he zips out of the subway at the last second. And Batista isn't quick enough and gets trapped on the subway with Harrison. And then right after that, you have Harrison showing up to work and hearing about this job that's paying a ridiculous amount of money, but it's at Prater's establishment. And so while initially he's very much turned on to the idea of making that amount of money, he tells his friend, no, I can't do it, just to immediately be told that, hey, somebody up in like this presidential suite is requesting you to bring them this late breakfast, and it's none other than Charlie. And Charlie essentially corners him and locks him in the room for an interrogation. And I thought it was a cool little stylistic choice here to tell this entire sequence in retrospective. So you have him going up into the room and you see Charlie opening the door and kind of looking around before she shuts it. And then it immediately cuts to Harrison on the roof of this hotel calling Dexter. And he's recanting all of the events to Dexter in retrospective form. So I thought that was kind of interesting to tell it that way. So Dexter's asking all these questions. What did you say? What did she ask? What did you give her? And I like the fact that they had it set up in a way where Harrison is essentially telling half-truths, which very clearly Uma Thurman's character has military training. She has interrogation training. And so this whole thing is to get some sort of truth out of him. And when you're able to tell the truth, but it's kind of like out of context, you can shield yourself from stuff like that, where you don't have a lot of the tells. You don't have a lot of the body language or your eye movements that let people know that you're being dishonest because you're actually telling truths. It's just not in the way that they think. So I thought that was very well written, where she's asking him about his relationship with his dad, and he's essentially telling her the truth of his relationship with Dexter Morgan, but there's just enough false to it that it's not enough to implicate or give her enough details to put all the pieces together. So that was a really well-written sequence, and I think Uma Thurman's performance in it was really good. I've heard a couple people say the opposite, that she really dropped the ball in that scene, and that's surprising to me, because to me it really felt like she was trying to deliberately put on this intimidation factor in front of Harrison. Now, if you just don't buy Uma Thurman being intimidating, I guess maybe it comes across that way. I think she's done a really good job at being intimidating so far. So the fact that she was so cold and focused on him, and even got that little chuckle whenever he said that he's a Your Car Driver at the irony of it all, I really liked her performance in that moment. So now you have where Dexter just told Prater, my son is off limits. We can do whatever. I'll give you whatever you want. We can have all these little fucking meeting of the minds, and I'll pour my soul out to you whenever we get a second to get by ourselves. But my son is not a part of this. And the fact that immediately after that, his son is being interrogated, now it's pushed him to the point where it's like, okay, I know that this is going to come to a point of contention very soon. Now it has to happen immediately. Now these fuckers got to go down now. So it very much pushes Dexter into kill mode. And so he runs over and he resolves things very quickly with Blessing. He enters Blessing's house. Blessing is in the same state of mind that he was the previous day, where, you know, he feels betrayed by Dexter, wants nothing to do with him, and he's just absolutely shattered at the fact that his family now knows about his dark past. And Dexter kind of pours his heart out and says, hey, man, like, you know, I just felt like with the needles and everything, I let this out. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. And it's genuine, I believe. It's a genuine apology. But also Dexter has that little X factor that always gets people to kind of warm to him. And so very quickly, Blessing completely forgives him, gives him a hug, and he needs a favor, which is to pick up Harrison from work, because he doesn't want the potential of somebody following him and then figuring out where he lives and where to find Harrison. Now, what I will say is that having seen the entire episode, I think back to this sequence, and I've been on record multiple times throughout this season that while I don't hate it, I do think that the Blessing and Blessing's family element to Resurrection is one of the weaker parts of this season. I understand what they're going for, trying to bring humanity in there, trying to give Dexter somebody to have that human relationship with and bring a little bit of light into all the darkness of the show. It just feels very contrived and over the top to me how open and welcoming and friendly these people are, and they haven't done enough compelling with their characters for me to forgive that yet. But what I will say is that this sequence, I think, was some missed opportunity to really have this on-the-nose juxtaposition of forgiveness. Because I'm going to skip forward to the end a little bit. When you ultimately get to what happens between him and Batista at the end of the episode, which is that forgiveness is off the table completely, I think you could have really reinforced the juxtaposition of that with Blessing, where he has this relationship with somebody that has no reason to forgive him, but ultimately does, which on paper is what happens, but it's not strong enough to really feel like this compelling, poignant, and, you know, profound moment that has this thematic tie to where things ultimately end by the end of this hour. So it was a fine scene, but in retrospect, I feel like there could have been more that we could have gotten out of this scene aside from just Dexter trying to get forgiveness very quickly so that he can use Blessing to his advantage for what he needs. So I will say that about that. I wish they would have done a little bit more with that scene. Then immediately after that, you have Dexter, who he on the phone with Harrison. He asks Harrison to get hotel records for that reservation that Charlie had for this room. And he uses that information to go to Charlie's house. That was incredibly contrived to me. The fact that Charlie would book a hotel reservation under her own name with her own information while pursuing a very elusive and smart serial killer who is very obviously going to find out immediately that she confronted his son. To me, that was either extremely stupid on her part, which is very out of character for her, for what we know of her of the season so far, or just an incredibly contrived moment to get Dexter from point A to point B, and I tend to lean on the latter. Didn't like destroy it for me, but there's moments like that throughout Resurrection where it's just like, wish you could have taken a couple more minutes to figure out something else there, because you really do like your shortcuts, and sometimes it just stands out like a sore thumb. So to me, incredibly contrived that he was able to get that information so easily. But nonetheless, he goes to Charlie's house with this hotel information and finds out, which we already kind of knew, that she's a veteran, that she's been in all these different organizations in the U.S. military, and her mother was as well, and figures out that her mother is actually sick and is having in-home care, which we've seen her in like what seemed to be a hospital. So this was a little bit of a reveal that it's actually in her own house, which leads even more to the speculation that I had that, and a lot of people had, that Prater is the one funding her mother's treatment, and that's why she's kind of indebted to him, which is exactly what it ends up being. So he finds this out. He immediately leaves because he's not going to, do anything to a sick older woman, and goes and finds Charlie as she's picking up some flowers and confronts her by using his little strangulation device and getting her dead to rights right there in the vehicle. And I thought this scene had some incredible acting in it, both on Michael C. Hall's part, where you get that really dark, angry, vengeful version of Dexter, but he's also coloring it in a way where it's actually him playing the dark, vengeful version of Red. So he's still very much kind of putting on a face. Like, his mask hasn't completely slipped to show the true Dexter Morgan. He's just switched it out for a different mask, and his real face is just kind of bleeding through a little bit. So the nuances in what Michael C. Hall was able to do in that scene, I thought was incredible, where he's incredibly pissed off and, he's breathing heavy and everything because he's just so fucking angry that she confronted Harrison and his son is this close to danger. And Uma Thurman's acting, if you didn't like it in the previous scene where she was confronting Harrison, I wouldn't understand at all why you wouldn't like her acting in this scene, because I thought it was the best work she's done all season, where you finally see that tough exterior melt as he mentions her mother, and immediately she's thinking, my mother's dead. He just fucking sawed her head off, and now I'm next. And so he's saying all these things, and all she's doing is just tunnel vision, just focusing on her mom. And, ultimately he lets her know that, no, I did not kill your mom, but it would be very fucking easy too. So why the hell are you messing around with my son? And she lets out the revelation that she really doesn't like Prater all that much. She certainly does not understand, respect, or enjoy this whole serial killer club that he does. She does not respect him as a person. She's like almost his slave. She's indebted to him as he keeps her mother alive, which she said for like 8 years going now, and for however long she still has left. And so that does bring a little color of sympathy to her character, where Prater is obviously a master manipulator the way that Dexter is, and is moving all these chess pieces around for his own sick enjoyment. And for all of the different interactions we've seen with him and Charlie, it's been very obvious that he does not respect her. He does not like her at all. She's just the hired muscle, and he doesn't want to hear any of her thoughts. So it wasn't like a shocking revelation, but I thought it was well done as far as how that information was let out, the performance by Uma Thurman when she was letting the information out, and Dexter's immediate reaction to all of it, kind of understanding who the true mastermind is in all of this. Because in that moment, he's figuring like, yeah, Prater's kind of a sick, twisted fuck, but he's not like an immediate threat. Charlie's the one who's the immediate danger. And now in that moment, he realizes that it's the opposite, that Charlie is the one who's under the thumb of the true mastermind. And even though Prater has not pulled the trigger himself, he's very much dangerous. And so whether he fits the code completely or not, for self-preservation as well, even more importantly for the preservation of Harrison, he's got to fucking go. So now all of his sights are set on Peter Dinklage for the rest of this episode. So I really enjoyed that just from an acting standpoint from both of them, especially with the different nuances of Michael C. Hall. What he continues to bring to the Dexter character all these years later is just a master class. There's a reason why, for as much as a lot of us did enjoy Original Sin, and there's a lot of people that enjoyed it significantly more than me, and Patrick Gibson did a very good job. When Michael C. Hall's playing Dexter, that's the only Dexter that we're focusing on for the most part. So wasn't a huge surprise to me that they canceled that show, but neither here nor there. I did a little short talking about that. So after that little confrontation, you cut to Wallace and Oliva. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. Oliva, the two detectives. And they're now pursuing this manhole hook lead that Dexter gave them a couple episodes ago, and realizing that this is a public service tool. And so now they're starting to narrow the window of who could possibly be the New York Ripper to all these different public service departments and all these different categories of people. And so now they're starting to close in on details of who's eventually going to be revealed to be the New York Ripper, without still giving us any deliberate guess or any deliberate hints towards who it might be. I might talk about that a little bit more at the end, but I did do a video a couple days ago talking about all of the popular theories of the New York Ripper. So if you have not seen that, I'll link that video up here. Please check that out. But yeah, so they start closing in on all of that, and then Batista comes in. under the guise that he is going to continue to give them some more information to try to have them help him in his pursuit of Dexter. And unbeknownst to him, the conversation with Quinn happened last week. So he shows up, they take him to the interrogation room, and they basically lay it all out, saying, hey, I talked to Joseph Quinn. I know that you're not with Miami Metro anymore. You've literally committed a felony. Coming in here under false pretenses, posing as a officer of the law, and using our resources and going into very secure locations like the prison in episode, 5 or 6. And you committed a felony. Like, you could go to prison for this. And so I love the reaction, the performance from David Zayas in this moment, where he's still like just scrambling, trying to get them to believe anything. And I love the moment where he's trying to justify certain things about what happened, and then he just pauses and he goes, fuck, like, this is what he fucking does. That was great, because it is what he does. He always finds these little ways to make the person who's right look like a psycho, look like they're irrational, because Dexter's like the most unassuming person in the world. Like, you think I'm a serial killer? Like, clearly they're whacked out of their mind. And so I really enjoyed that moment from him. And then the ultimate crushed feeling you have as a fan, knowing what now is going to impede him, as well as just the look on his character's face when they take his shield away. Like, he's accepted at this point. They're not going to help me. I'm now on my own. Goes to leave, and they say, hey, Miami Metro told us that you have to surrender your shield. And so he kind of looks at it in this reflective moment, almost looking back at the events of the last 10 years, 10 seasons, I should say, and hands his badge in, goes out, looks at everybody operating inside of the NYPD, and then walks out with this determined face like he's still going to handle shit himself. So another really good moment there. Then Dexter ends up going back to his apartment, and he hears a female's voice, assumes that it's Charlie inside, and busts open the door, and it's Harrison and Gigi messing around on the couch. Now, I'm going to pause here for a moment, because I've seen a theory circulating that on its surface I think is absolutely asinine, but there's enough sick, twisted, there's enough of a sick, twisted sense to it that, I wouldn't put it past some writer to pitch this idea. I don't think there's a chance in hell they're actually going to do this, and I think it would be absolutely ridiculous. Like, it would totally trump the whole Deb is in love with Dexter bullshit as the most ridiculous thing the show has ever done. But nonetheless, just to talk about it for a moment, because I haven't addressed it yet, there is now a theory circulating that I've seen in multiple comments that Gigi is going to be revealed to be Aster. That Harrison is fucking his half-sister. And she's hunted them down, and she knows who Dexter is, and it's all some kind of a weird game. Like, maybe she's a serial killer and Cody's a serial killer, like they are in the book. Some of you guys are fucked in the head. Let me just say that. Like, what are we doing? Like, Dexter pulling an old boy would be the most jump the shark, what the fuck are we doing, I want to throw up moment that they could possibly do. There's this thing that's going on with fandom now, and I don't know who to blame. I don't know if it's like post-MCU stuff where there's so many cameos and we're all about the cameos and the gotcha moments now, where people just want shocking twists and connections and reveals, no matter how ridiculous they are. They just want to have something crazy to talk about on TikTok. I don't know if that's what all this is from, but there's a tendency now inside of a lot of fandoms, and Dexter fandom for sure, where people are trying to draw connections to every single little character. You know, Joey Quinn is actually the New York Ripper because he worked in New York at one point. It makes sense, and it would be shocking. Oh, Gigi, she's an unassuming character, but there's no such thing as an unassuming character in Dexter. That's never happened, apparently. So she has to have some connection. Who could it be? She's either Charlie's daughter or she's Aster. No. I'm not the writer, so I'm not going to bet body parts that they don't have any twist planned for Gigi, but there's plenty of times that characters have come in that don't ultimately lead to some crazy reveal. They're not all Christine Hills. And so, yeah, Gigi, I would say, if anything, is just going to be paid off as she's going to be killed. Like, they're going to end the season with her being the new New York Ripper victim, or Prater's going to take her to draw out Harrison to try to draw out Dexter. Something is going to happen where she's a chess piece. It's not going to be some shocking reveal that Harrison has been fucking railing his half-sister. Anyway, this video is getting demonetized immediately. Thanks, guys. So you have Harrison and Gigi messing around on the couch. Dexter comes in. He's kind of playing that cool dad of like, so what's up, guys? And they talk about blood spatter analyzing for a minute and how it's kind of an outdated thing, even though Dexter was always a master at it. And Harrison said, hey, you know, he's actually helping them figure out who the New York Ripper is. He just like broke the whole thing off of what actually the weapon was. And so interesting conversation there. But the most significant detail that seemed insignificant in the moment until I thought back on it is that, you know, Gigi, I think, goes to the bathroom or something like that, and Harrison and him have this little talk where it's like, hey, is it okay if I go to Gigi's house? First of all, what absolute spot-on writing for a fucking horny 20-something-year-old. Oh, there's a massive manipulator, fucking rich guy who's tied with the politics of New York, who's actually like the mastermind of serial killers who wants you dead, and so we have to hide out in this apartment. You think it's cool if I go to my girlfriend's apartment and fuck her tonight? Like, am I safe? Like, the priorities are spot on. Fuck the danger. My dick's hard. Anyway, you have that whole thing that I thought was hilarious. I got a good chuckle out of that. And the fact that Dexter didn't call that out. He was just like, well, you know, they might know where I live, but there's no way in hell they know where Gigi lives. And so you're probably safer over there. There's a little bit of logic to that, but still. Nonetheless, there's a moment where it has this shot where it very much focuses on Dexter and Harrison's face, and it doesn't show anything below their chest. And Dexter turns around to grab him something, and he's like, hey, so if you're going to be over at Gigi's house tonight, you might need some protection. And he's like, you know, do you know how to, and Harrison's like, yeah, I got it, Dad, puts it in his pocket. Obviously, the obvious assumption that you can make is that he gave him a rubber. But the fact that they didn't show it was very interesting to me, because what would be weird about showing a condom? Like, you know, like, hey, it's the same joke if that's what the payoff is just having this awkward dad-son moment where it's like, you know, wrap your tool, bitch. So I think there's a possibility, even though them not paying this off in the same episode is going to be a little tricky, I think there's a possibility that he gave him like an M99 needle or a knife or something like that. You know, we know he keeps M99 in the fridge behind him, which is where this conversation happened. So I don't think that it's ridiculous to assume that that moment was not shown definitively what he gave him on purpose. Now, how many people in the next episode, if it ends up in a point where Dexter and Harrison are in trouble and Harrison pulls out a fucking needle, I mean, they'll have to flash back to it. But how many people are going to be like shocked by that? Like it's an awesome moment. I don't know. It depends on the execution. But it felt very odd to me that they didn't show what he gave him and he just simply said protection, because you could take that in multiple ways. Immediately they want us to think it's a condom, but it might be something that's going to be used to save the day in the next episode. So that's what my thought was on that. And my buddy Charles Willis Greedia brought that up to me too. And I was like, yeah, they didn't show that. So I kind of had the same thought as you, that it was very deliberate to not show that drew my attention to it. Nonetheless, Harrison's going to go have a great night, and Dexter is getting ready to take down Prater once and for all. So he gives him Prater is having a conversation with Charlie, and he is like totally impressed and turned on that Red attacked Charlie, that he got the drop on her and that he left this little cut on her neck. Like, he didn't care at all that she almost died. He was just like, holy shit, that's fucking great. Like, you survived an encounter with the Dark Passenger. How badass is that? And of course, she doesn't share the same giddiness at all. But yeah, he's totally nerding out like, this is fucking great. I love this guy. And so really great acting, by the way, from Peter Dinklage in this episode. Like, in that moment, him kind of nerding out and just like getting giddy, that stuff was great. And so right after that, they get this phone call from Red, and there's a lot of double speak going on, where now Prater and Charlie know that there's probably a chance that he's coming to fuck them up. But nonetheless, he's still going to open up the possibility of meeting him and getting this talk out the way. So they set up this little confrontation, and Dexter's, playing with this knife that he's going to use. So now it's all set in motion. We're going to have our seemingly final confrontation between Red and Prater and likely Charlie as well. Then we cut to Batista, who is now basically all out of options, all out of avenues to take, and he's essentially storming into Prater's office and, fighting and struggling with the security guard, saying that he has very important information, that it has to deal with Prater's life being in danger. And he eventually gets taken upstairs, and the room is shut, and it's just Prater and Charlie and Batista. And Batista drops the bomb that, shows him the pictures that he's taken, and he's like, this is Dexter Morgan. I worked with him for 20 years at Miami Metro, and it just kind of shows Prater's reaction of like, keep talking, and it cuts off there. Now, something that I'm going to get a lot more into as we get to the end of this little recap is that there's a little bit of an issue that I have, actually a pretty significant issue that I have, where it feels like in the last episode, less so, but more so in this episode, they've got Batista in such a mode of desperation that it feels like they're very much dropping the intelligence of the character in order to make these certain events work. And while last week, him being just kind of on the high of adrenaline of finding the Bay Harbor Butcher's kill room right before he's about to execute somebody seemingly, and just riding the high of that and being excited and being, just not thinking straight, calling the detectives, and then looking like a fool when he doesn't actually have any conclusive evidence. That one I didn't mind so much because I believed just the adrenaline rush that Batista would be having in that moment. However, in this episode, this is the first of a couple things that he does that I just don't completely buy. So if Batista is absolutely dead set on the idea, which clearly he is, that Dexter is the Bay Harbor Butcher, and he knows maybe as well as anybody else on Earth every detail of the Bay Harbor Butcher case, then he knows that the Bay Harbor Butcher pretty much only exclusively takes out serial killers. So why he never had the thought of Dexter is pursuing Prater because he's likely into some bad shit, maybe a serial killer himself, and he just forgoes all of that caution and puts himself right in this situation to be killed, injured, taken hostage, whatever, from Dexter's latest target. That felt a little odd to me. In the moment, it didn't, because I didn't know exactly where it was leading, but now in retrospective, after having slept on it and thought over details, that's something that doesn't sit very well with me. That he very clearly thinks that Dexter is pursuing Prater. Prater is his next victim. He's in danger. He's in the warpath, and never makes the second connection of why he's in the warpath and why he would fit the MO of the Bay Harbor Butcher. I don't like that. I don't like that. If we're going to close out the story of Batista this soon, in my opinion, I don't like the fact that we have to make him a less intelligent character to get us there. So, not the last time you're going to hear me explore that in this episode recap, but in that moment, him doing that felt a bit out of character to me. Nonetheless, he drops the bomb that you're dealing with Dexter Morgan, and we just see Prater's reaction. Then it cuts to Dexter getting into Prater's compound, and we get another great needle drop. This episode had great needle drops in it. I think the needle drop aesthetic that they brought in with Original Sin and they've carried over to Dexter Resurrection, sometimes it can be a little bit too much. I think they've done it significantly better in Resurrection than they did in Original Sin, but this episode, all three that we get were awesome for the scene. So you get a great needle drop. Dexter, the badass that he is, he's, reapplied the little thumbprint trick that he's done. He's going through all the scanners and all the gates, just going right into the fucking devil's den. And as we know, this isn't going to go very well. It seems like he's kind of going into this a little bit half-cocked as it is, but now he's not privy to the information that we are, that they now know that he's not Red. So he sees Prater, says, I'm really looking forward to this, and then suddenly Charlie comes out of nowhere and sticks him up with the gun, takes everything out of his pockets, including his one weapon, which was the knife. Didn't seem like he had M99 on him, which was a little strange, but nonetheless, takes the knife away from him, and they lead him into the vault. And I'm here to tell you, despite some of my reservations and issues and concerns about what happens in this vault, this entire sequence, I don't know if I took a full breath the entire time it was happening. It was the most on edge, anxious, shocked, scared, emotional that I have been watching Dexter probably since season 4. And I have to give credit to them for that. They got a lot of reactions out of me as a fan and as a viewer. But when the vault opened and they're leading him in there and slowly you start to see this shadow and the silhouette of a body on the table, I was like, oh, fuck. Like, don't do this. Not now. I have very much been on record, passionately, that I don't think killing Batista is a good direction for this show to take. There's a lot of people who have disagreed with me. There is a lot of people. I did a whole rant video talking about people who have not just thought that Batista was going to die, which is fine, but wanted Batista to die. Like, no, fuck him. He's getting too close. Dexter prevails. Kill that bitch. I saw so much of that after the episode where he drops the AirPods in his car that just, it blew my mind. It drove me nuts as a fan where I'm like, how the fuck do you justify to me that that's the best thing to do with these characters? There is so much left on the table still. There is so much potential for drama and tension and everything between these two characters that has been building for 10 seasons and 15 years. And you just want it to be resolved as quickly as possible? Why? It still doesn't make sense to me. And so when they showed him on the table, I knew very strong possibility that this is it for Batista. And in that moment, I'm like, motherfucker, you better earn this. If you're going to do this, you better do it right. You better make me understand and make me come around on this. Do not fucking lose me here at episode 9. So I had so many emotions going on. Nonetheless, you have Prater and Charlie lead him into this room, and Prater's letting him know that, like, hey, your buddy Batista over here let me know that you're the Bay Harbor Butcher, and I think it's fucking awesome. And I have said for a couple weeks now that I cannot wait for the moment when Prater finds out that Dexter is actually the Bay Harbor Butcher, because I know it's going to be awesome. I know he's going to fanboy out. He's not going to give the lol reaction. He's going to be like, this is so fucking cool. I don't even care that you killed everybody else, dude. Fucking pound it. That's awesome. And that's basically what we got here. I loved Dinklage's performance in this scene. I think it's his best scene of the season. So he's like, yeah, I found out you're the Bay Harbor Butcher, and I think it's fucking fantastic. Like, I thought it was weird when you came in and you had such a reaction to the Bay Harbor Butcher trophies when I first showed you. And he said, well, then when your buddy Batista over here told us that you were Dexter Morgan, and just, oh, it all came together. And he says, Lowell didn't just disappear. You took him out as well as Red. How'd you do it? Like, immediately he's just fascinated. He's like, dude, fucking tell me. Like, I want details. And Dexter's immediate response is, you think I'm going to give you the details when he's laying there? And Prater gives this great moment that I actually laughed. Even though I was on edge, I kind of chuckled, where he's like, oh yeah, ooh, earmuffs. And like the look on Prater and Dinklage's face was great. I loved his performance in this moment. But you have this horrible scenario now where Prater essentially tells him, like, I think this is fucking awesome, dude. Like, we are a dream team. I want to basically bankroll what you do. I have so much access to so many different serial killers across the globe, which is a very important detail that I'm going to get back to. I have access to serial killers across the globe. I can literally draw them here with a phone call, and you can take them out. Like, let's fucking do this. And on paper, with Batista out of the equation, that's a really nice deal for Dexter. Like, there's a moment there where I'm sure he's like, that actually is pretty fucking, that's pretty sweet. Like, I could do a lot of good with that. That might actually work. But because Batista's there and they fucked around with Harrison, there's no chance he's going to take this deal. But it's like, God, why didn't you fucking offer me this deal like 2 days ago? But yeah, so he offers him that deal and he's like, so how does, Angel over here work into that deal? And he's like, oh, well, he's your price of admission, and, gives him this knife. And Charlie immediately does not like this, where she tries to stop him and he's like, shh, shut up, bitch. Here, gives him the knife. Dexter walks around to Batista, trying to say anything, trying to get out of it. And you get this great monologue in his head where he's like, Angel Batista has been a danger to me. He's been a danger to my son. Now he knows without a shadow of a doubt that I'm the Bay Harbor Butcher. He's never going to stop, and raises the knife. And I never believed for a second he was actually going to plunge the knife into Batista. I knew he was going to let him loose. And, you know, let me pause here for a second in saying that I've said at least once, maybe a couple times, that if they kill Batista, that's going to destroy the show for me. I should have chosen my words a little more carefully when I said that. Because for me, it's more specifically if Dexter kills Batista. If it's a Dokes situation all over again, or a LaGuerta situation all over again, that more specifically is what would have destroyed the show for me, because that would not have played well at all. That wouldn't have been earned. That wouldn't have made sense for the character. And so in that moment, I knew he's not going to kill him. It's like, okay, well, you're going to tease me with the worst case scenario, which is what absolutely would destroy the show for me. But I know you're not going to do that, because the writers have to be smart enough to understand that that would destroy the show for a lot of us. So he's got the knife in the air, and then he just does that little move that he did off camera with Shipka in the last episode, and cuts all the straps. And you get this great moment where he's like, we were partners once, maybe we'll be partners yet again. And Batista wastes no time. Immediately gets off the table and fucking pushes him and knocks the knife out of his hand and throws him to the floor, rips the tape off and starts strangling him. And says, this is for Dokes, this is for Maria, like, your bullshit's got to stop now. And I rewatched the scene, and in the moment, I didn't really notice this, but a detail that I did like is that you have Dexter, like, immediately start to fight back, and then he kind of accepts it, and he stops fighting back. And he says, there's something poetic about dying at the hands of my best friend. So in that moment, for a split second, he kind of accepts it, that this is how it has to be. But I knew in that moment this is not going to happen. Like, not only just because we have one more episode, but like, even if this was episode 10, I'm like, this isn't the end. Why is Batista forgetting that there's two other people in the room who are very dangerous that have weapons? So suddenly you hear some gunshots go off, and Batista gets shot from behind about 5 different times. And it's shown that he falls down and Prater's behind him. Prater shot him. And immediately tries to shoot Dexter, but Charlie pulls him out of the way to get him out of harm's way, and he misses. Dexter grabs an axe and throws it at Charlie. It hits her in the hand and drops a gun into the room, and then they close the room and lock it down, and Prater has this moment where he's like weighing by all ominously as the door shuts, and Dexter immediately runs over to Batista, shocked, worried, upset, and gives a voiceover that I think is very deliberate, that says there's no coming back from this. There's no God that can save him now. I've seen a couple of people, even my buddy Charles, that have said, well, they didn't show that Batista dies, so I bet in the next episode he's going to be alive. They're just trying to shock everybody for a week. I think that line of dialogue was very deliberate to let everybody know this is the end. Even though we're going to cut to black very soon after this, and that's going to be people's optimistic side, hoping that in the next episode he's gonna have one more breath and Dexter's gonna be able to save him. Stranger things have happened in Dexter. I mean, Dexter fucking survived a gunshot to the goddamn chest because of the cold. But I think that line of dialogue was there on purpose to let the audience know, no, this is actually it. He's done. So Batista's dying, and Dexter uses these last moments to try to give him some kind of closure, and says, I need you to know that I did not kill Maria, and I did not kill Dokes. I may be the Bay Harbor Butcher, but I didn't kill them, I promise you. And I thought that was a good thing for him to say, because that's something that has been kind of lingering. Like, every single time they've had a confrontation this season, Batista has very specifically said those names, and all of us know, he says Dokes, Maria, and Deb. And all of us know, while Dexter's choices certainly led to their deaths, he didn't actually kill any of those people. And so at some point we knew, like, at what point are we going to have Dexter try to clear the air? It's probably not going to be worth anything. It's going to be for naught. But at what point is he going to try to correct Batista and say, I didn't kill them? And here was the moment for it. And I think it was a great moment to do it, where he's using his last moments with him to try to bring him some resolve with that. And Batista is not having it. Immediately he says, but it was your fault. And now I'm here dying, and that's your fault too, just like them. And you see, again, the acting in this episode from start to finish was the best of the entire season so far, some of the best of the entire series. And you have all these little nuances and facial acting and silent performances going on with Michael C. Hall as he's hearing this from Batista, which is very clearly so painful for him. It's not the first time he's been confronted with the reality of you're the fucking wrecking ball that is causing all of this damage. But in this moment, there was something slightly different about it, where it hurt more hearing that from Batista. You know, you go all the way back to season 1, season 2, and even though they weren't like hanging out after work all the damn time, it wasn't like quite as much of a thing of like Walter White and Hank. It was along those lines where Dexter doesn't really have the capacity to have a friend, but there's one point where he says, if I could have a best friend, it would be Batista. And there's a moment, I believe, after he's accused of sexually assaulting Lila. Maybe I'm getting the timeline wrong, but in those first 2 seasons, there's a point where he tells Batista, if there was somebody that I would want to be, it's you. And Batista doesn't really he's like, I don't know what that means, but thanks, buddy. There's plenty of times earlier on where they've established his relationship with Batista is different. He's not just a coworker. He's not a piece of the Dexter Morgan mask. If anybody has the potential to bring those human pieces out of Dexter, it's Batista. So there's much more on the line here. The fact that he has now seemingly caused the death of that guy versus somebody like Dokes or Maria. So you get that where he says it, but I'm sitting here dying and it's your fault, just like with them. And Michael C. Hall's reaction was very emotional in that moment where he's just kind of giving these facial expressions like, fuck, man, you feel like he's on the ropes. He only has seconds. He's trying to do anything that he can to try to resolve this, and he's not able to. And you get the most devastating part of it with brilliant execution by David Zayas, where he's sitting there and after the very dark tone with everything that he's saying, but it's your fault. Now I'm sitting here dying. He's very angry. He lets go of that for a split second. And he says Dexter Morgan, but he says it in almost like this loving, trying to remember who he thought he was way. Dexter Morgan. And Dexter leans in to listen and he goes, fuck you. And as soon as he says that, the look on Dexter's face of that's his last words. That's his last thought. He's right. Fuck. Angel keels over. And very similar to the first episode of season 5, after he has his first true human reaction to Rita's death, he just fucking loses it. And just screams. And then the episode cuts to black. And then you get the best needle drop of the entire season because of the emotional implications of it, where Mad World starts to play. Whoa. I don't know how to feel. It's 12 hours later. I still don't really know how to feel. And it's going to take, obviously, seeing the finale before I think I can even make a solidified opinion on how I feel. But I have a lot of complicated reactions to what just happened. Now, on the positive side, I think the writing, with the exception of dumbing down Batista a bit, which actually, let me get into that for a second. Now that we see that Batista's gone, the episode is closed out, I'm able to take my first breath. I'm having my emotions about it. Looking back on it, and I thought one of my immediate reactions to this death is I think they did a really great job at setting this up. I think they did a really great job at executing it, no pun intended, especially with the acting. The performances were top notch. It was tense. It was brutal. It was shocking. It was emotional. It's all the things a scene like this should be. I had all the emotional reactions that I should have and want to have with a major death like that. I want to be devastated, and I was. I still am. but there was a lingering thought in my head of like, but something feels off. And it's not my own issues with the idea of killing Batista. I'm going to get into all of that. It's not, well, what the fuck do we do now? It's not all of that. Just with the isolated sequence in and of itself, there was a lingering thought in my head about, but something was off here. And what I think was off ties back into what I was saying earlier about how they had to kind of dumb Batista down a little bit to get him in Prater's hands. I think the one simple change that could have made this sequence much more palatable for me and could have redeemed the fact that they had to dumb down Batista a little bit by the end of it. You have everything play out the exact same way. You have the same setup. You have Dexter being walked into the vault. You have Batista on the table. You have the same dialogue exchange. Everything up to the point of the knife above Batista. He slits the restraints, and you get that moment where he says, we are partners once, maybe we'll be partners again. Batista gets off the table. But here's where you change it. You have Dexter hand him the knife, and he grabs the axe. And you tease us for 5 seconds longer than they did that we're about to have Dexter and Batista team up and kick ass together. And the emotional reaction you have as a fan of like, oh, thank God he didn't kill him. And then the adrenaline rush of, oh, they're about to fuck these dudes up together. This is awesome. First time we've seen the Bay Harbor Butcher team up with somebody from Miami Metro like that. You know, similar to how him and Dokes took out those the people who were leading Dokes down the dock or whatever, but all the more powerful. Tease us with that for 5 seconds longer. Dexter's got a weapon, presumably the axe that was right behind him in reaching distance, and Batista's got this knife. And then Batista turns and plunges the knife into Dexter. And now you have a third guttural reaction as a fan of like, oh, fuck, no. You know Dexter's not dead because we have one more episode and we know they've already announced we're getting more resurrection, but still the moment of they were about to be a team again. We got the wide shot of them both with a weapon and Prater and Charlie's reaction to that. And Batista does the exact same thing where his immediate reaction is, I'm taking down Dexter. I don't give a fuck what happens to anybody else in this room. This shit stops now. But he doesn't seem like an idiot because he at least has a chance at completing what he's trying to complete. He plunges the knife into Dexter. Obviously, it's like somewhere like here where it's not like in the heart. It's not nowhere where it's absolutely asinine he would survive, but he goes to go down to the ground and he's like almost turns into a butcher himself, and Dexter goes to hold him and stop him. Same way that he does, starts to contemplate if he's going to actually let Batista just end it right here. The same exact dialogue, something poetic about dying at the hands of my best friend. And then the exact same thing happens where Prater or Charlie, Prater, would shoot him. But that one little change of Batista getting a weapon in his hand and at least having a situation where it's plausible he's going to come out on top gets rid of my issue of them having to make him a bit of an impulsive idiot. Because I'm not okay with the fact, I understand blind rage and I understand what they're going for, that like it's tunnel vision. That's all he exists for now, is to bring down the Bay Harbor Butcher at all costs. I get that. But it doesn't sit right with me that you have Batista, who up to this point has always been a smart detective, is literally in a room where 2 other very dangerous people with weapons are in there, and he completely forgets about all of that and just goes to strangle Dexter, the slowest possible way to kill somebody, and completely just ignores the fact that there's still big dangers in the room that is going to most likely lead to my downfall before I'm able to finish what I'm trying to finish here. I think that one little change would have made all the difference. As is, I think the sequence is great. As I said, I had all the reactions I wanted to and all the reactions that they wanted me to have. But that one detail of Batista having to act so irrationally out of character twice back to back That doesn't sit right with me. To me, that's where it starts to feel like this death is a bit unearned. And you need to completely 100% earn this death. 100%. I mean, it's not really a secret so far this season that they're starting to kind of copy from the playbook of the final season of Breaking Bad. And if that had happened alongside Breaking Bad airing its final season, that would have been very frustrating. In retrospect, it's been so many years. Breaking Bad is my favorite show of all time. It's one of the greatest endings of all time, one of the best final seasons of all time. If you're going to copy from somebody's homework, that's the homework to copy. And so I'm actually totally okay with them taking a few plays. Like we had the whole tread lightly parallel moment earlier on in the season with them in the car. And very much they're trying to function Batista as Dexter's Hank. Like this is the pure innocence, the person that absolutely does not deserve this, that totally has earned bringing me down, that is now a death that is added on top of all the things that are now weighing on my conscience, but this one is different. This is the one that breaks me. I think that is, on paper, a good way to use Batista. But I don't think pulling that card now was the best choice. And I don't think dumbing down Batista a bit to make that happen was a good choice at all. I really feel like there was a lot more to be done with this that now is not going to happen. And that leaves me feeling very worried and incomplete for the potential of this series going on. You know, I love the show so far. I'm not saying that I'm checked out. I'm not saying they've lost me. I'm not saying that, like, okay, great, now you're doing it for the third time, you're fucking this up again. I'm not quite on that level yet. But for me, I just don't know what we're building to now. I don't know what this revival is ultimately building to as the ultimate, hopefully, actually final conclusion to this character and to this story whenever we get there. If it's not Batista eventually bringing down Dexter, I don't know what is left to do that could be on that level of satisfaction. If we punt to Joey Quinn for season 2, which I'm going to be shocked if he's not in season 2 because like he's already been notified Batista's in New York pursuing the Bay Harbor Butcher. He's going to obviously follow up with that. When he finds out Batista's dead, absolutely he's bringing his ass to New York. So I'm going to be shocked if Joey Quinn's not the Batista stand-in of sorts for season 2. But if we're going that route of now Joey Quinn being the one who might potentially ultimately bring down Dexter, that's not nearly as satisfying as Batista doing it. And if it's not Joey Quinn, like if he's just another person who's going to pursue Dexter that ultimately is going to have an ill fate, who's left on the chessboard? The Detective Wallace and Oliva, assuming one of them isn't revealed to be the New York Ripper. Like, that's infinitely more unsatisfying than Joey, who is infinitely less satisfying than Batista. And then who's left? Masuka? Are we going to build to some kind of cute irony that the unassuming other forensics guy is eventually going to get the better hand and bring down the Bay Harbor Butcher by the end? Is it going to be Aster and Cody coming back? Like, I just don't, like, there's a beauty in not knowing where the show is going to go. I don't want to be able to figure out where the writers are going. I want to be surprised. That's the hopeful side of this. Is, okay, seemingly the obvious route is now completely off the table. Now where the fuck are you going? There's something good about that. Of, wow, now I'm totally clueless of what's going to happen. Like, bravo, you shocked me, you surprised me, you subverted my expectations. But as somebody who considers themselves a Dexter superfan, like, I'm for the last 12 hours going through all the possible scenarios of what we might be building to for the potential ending here. And it really just feels like if we're playing chess, it's like you brought your queen out too early and now you lost your queen. What's left? What are you going to do now? And that's the biggest complication that I have is like, are you going to earn this? In time, in retrospective, when we get the next episode or the next season or two, is this going to feel like a great, huge, epic, emotional, earned moment in the Dexter lore? Or are we going to look back in an episode or a year from now or 2 years from now and say, you shouldn't have fucking killed Batista in season 1. You were going for shock value and you fucking wrote yourself into a corner. Which I wouldn't normally assume the worst. But we had season 8 in New Blood where they did exactly that. Just shockingly bad decisions out of nowhere. Where it's like, who the fuck thought that was a good idea? All season long, it felt like they have learned their lesson from that. And they have just been significantly better writers. And they have totally redeemed themselves up to this point. And I'm not saying that this shatters it again. But I don't know. It might for me. So yeah, I really don't. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. You're going to have to check in with me next week when we get episode 10. And depending on what happens with that, you might have to wait until we see the rest of this show play out before I really know exactly how I feel. Like, Dokes is somebody that, although I love the way they used him in season 2, and I don't mind at all the way that he was taken out for the story of season 2, all a decade plus later, a lot of other people still feel like Dokes was taken out way too early. Like there was just so much potential that was left just completely thrown out because they wanted to do that. Is Batista going to be the next version of that? Where, yeah, it was executed well. It was emotional. It was a great moment. It was a good season. But we had, a collective 45 minutes throughout 9 episodes of really focusing on Batista chasing Dexter. It didn't really become into the forefront until the last 2 episodes. So for as many people that have been saying like, oh, I don't want another season of Batista chasing Dexter, it's like Dokes was on his ass for 2 seasons, and we still, for a lot of us, say that we could have used more. Why is Batista suddenly like that's just played out? Because if you look back at this season, it was a very minor lingering subplot until the final stretch. So I don't know. All I will tell you is that I don't feel completely comfortable with it. And that could be very good storytelling. That could be a choice where it's like, we want you to feel that way. We want the fans to feel gutted right now. That's how much you love this character. That's how much David Zayas loves this character. That's how much Michael C. Hall loves this character. And if we were going to do that, and we chose to do that back when we were writing this season, we wanted to do it in a way that gets the most emotional payoff for its audience. And as of right now, I would say they achieved that. But now what are you going to do? Now how are you going to earn what you just did? Now how are we going to proceed? Is it just, Dexter's not going to have anybody from his past ever really take him down, and we're going to build to him walking off in the sunset with Harrison after 2 or 3 seasons. Like, I don't see any way where that's going to be satisfying. So, very complicated thoughts on this episode. I think that it's in conversation for one of the best episodes of the season alongside episode 4 and 7. I think the acting is the best that we've gotten all season long. I think there was so many great things in the episode. I loved it absolutely all the way up until the very end. And then I'm left with this very incomplete, guttural reaction that I don't really know how to sort through right now. And I've talked with it with a number of my friends who have seen the episode so far. And all of us are kind of feeling the same way with varying degrees of worry. But I just hope. I really hope they earn this, and I really hope they have something in store for not just the next episode, but the future of Dexter Resurrection that's going to be as good or better than my hopes for the ultimate confrontation between Batista and Dexter, because to me, this is not what I wanted, and this is not what I thought we had in store, and we have to see. So a few more thoughts about potential for the future, speculation for the future. So I mean, at this point, like, I think the argument that the New York Ripper storyline is going to lead to nothing and it's just like this extra detail that fans have blown up, I think you can pretty much throw that out the window now. Like, they literally keep going back to it so many times deliberately. It would be up there with one of the most ridiculous storytelling choices in Dexter history if they just never followed that up, if it was all just shit going on in the background to give characters something to talk about. And so I did the video yesterday. I'm probably going to do a short today to put on other platforms besides YouTube, going over some of the same things now with one episode extra, which we didn't really learn much else. But what I assume, if I was to bet what I assume is going to happen, is that I don't think that Peter Dinklage is going to be a recurring character. I do think he's going to ultimately end up on the table by the end of the next episode. But I think before Dexter gets to him, we're going to have something similar to season 4, where he sets something in motion that Dexter does not realize. And when he kills him, now, kind of like Jigsaw, a plan has been put in motion, and Prater's going to ultimately try to get the better of Dexter beyond the grave. How is he going to do that? I think Prater knows who the New York Ripper is. I think he already has a relationship with the New York Ripper. I think that's how he got his weapon. When he says that line about, I have access to serial killers all across the globe, that tells you that this little shindig of bringing together serial killers has been going on for a long time. It has this huge reach, and this is not the first time that he's done it, nor is this like the most diabolical group of people that he has assembled at this point. Like, he didn't seem all that impressed with Gemini, and Gemini was supposed to be like the fucking Jack the Ripper of this era of Dexter. So I think he knows who the New York Ripper is, and I think we're going to get some form of a scene. They're either going to show it outright, or we're going to find out right before the credits roll and put it together ourselves that Prater is going to essentially reactivate the New York Ripper, call him and say, hey, it's time for you to come back. The Bay Harbor Butcher is in New York. This is his face. This is his name. This is your ultimate prey. Start hunting, bitch. Whether or not they show who the New York Ripper is another question, but talk about an ultimate, like, holy shit fan moment is if they have a really cool casting in mind for the New York Ripper. They've already been casted for the next season. And we get a scene that not only sets up that the New York Ripper is going to be hunting the Bay Harbor Butcher in season 2, and that's ultimately what the story is going to be, but they show who the actor is. I don't think it's going to be him, but just imagine this. Imagine you have a scene where they either flash back to it after Prater's death or something, and they show Prater on the phone doing exactly what I just said, where he says, the Bay Harbor Butcher's in New York. I'm sending you a picture of him. His name is Dexter Morgan. He's got a son named Harrison. It's time to fucking come back. And then they cut to the person on the other side of the phone, and the camera moves up, and it's like Bryan Cranston or somebody like that. And that's how the season ends. Again, too on the nose, it's not going to be Bryan Cranston. I'd be shocked if it was. But something like that, where it's like, it's them versus Michael C. Hall. You know, like, I think that there's the potential that that's the direction they're going to go. I don't think we have enough time to resolve what's going on and then throw in an extra twist of like, ha, it's been blessing the whole time. I don't think that's on the table anymore. I really don't. So I do think the most plausible thing is that it's going to be punted to next season, but they're at least going to tease it in a way that gets us pumped and leaves us on edge for the next year. So that's the biggest piece of speculation. Like I said, I don't think anything's going on with Gigi. I don't think that she's asked her. But I think there's potential that maybe she's going to be a victim or a pawn that's used to get Harrison into harm's way in the next episode. I wouldn't assume she's going to be a recurring character either. Doesn't feel like there's enough there. What ultimately is going to happen with Blessing? Maybe he comes and protects Dexter and Harrison or something. There's something that needs to be paid off with him to resolve that storyline too. I don't know if he's going to be a recurring character either. It just doesn't feel like there's potential there. So that's kind of where I see things going. As far as Dexter, how he gets out of this room, I don't know. There's a gun that's left in there with him. But the next episode is going to be him taking down Prater. I think there's potential that Charlie is going to help, which that also is something that didn't quite sit well for me. I mean, obviously she feels threatened by Red, who now is Dexter, the Bay Harbor Butcher. but it felt odd to me that she's still so protective of Prater. Like, why she didn't just get the fuck out of the room and just let whatever happens chaos-wise happen in that room, and everybody takes everybody out, and, you know, whatever happens, she's free. That felt slightly out of character for who she was very much solidified to be in this episode. Like, do you hate Prater or do you not hate him? Do you want out of this or do you not want out of this? Or is it as simple as she hates him, but if he dies, then the treatment stops for her mom, so she still has to protect him? I guess I could accept that as an explanation, but that was something that's still, like, not nearly as much as Batista being a bit of a fool, but it was something that was like, that felt a little odd, that she's so protective of Prater still when she could have resolved everything there. Nonetheless, yeah, that's pretty much all my thoughts. I could ramble for another hour on this, but we've been talking for an hour and 12 minutes. So let me know your thoughts down below, guys. First of all, are you happy or satisfied that Batista died? Do you like the way that he died, or do you have some issues with it like I do? Did this ruin the season for you, or potentially the show? Like, are you totally checked out now? Did they lose you? And most importantly, if you did or didn't like Batista getting taken out, where do you think the show is going now? Now, I have to warn you, I'm not going to be in the comments section for a week because apparently the final episode has leaked somewhere, and so I am off social media for the next 7 days. I'm still going to post, but I'm not going to check comments. I'm not going to check messages, but comment down below. I will see them eventually. But let me know, what are your thoughts? What are we ultimately building to in this series as the hopefully good ending to Dexter finally, if it's not going to be Batista bringing down Dexter? Let me know, and we'll follow up with the finale for Season 1 of Dexter Resurrection in 7 long days. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click over here for all of my Dexter coverage. I've reviewed every single season of the show and every episode of New Blood and Resurrection so far. I'm also going to put my ranking up here of all of the different New York Ripper theories. If you have not seen that one, please check that out. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future, including my finale thoughts. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.